A hospice nurse once wrote down what dying people regret most. Not one person said, "I wish I'd bought a bigger house." But almost everyone regretted something quieter, something they held onto too long. Today we're looking at 5 things happy retirees deliberately let go of. Real research, real names behind each one. And for every single one, a specific action you can take this week. Stay to the end, because number 4 is the one most people get backwards. Here's a strange fact. The most common deathbed regret has nothing to do with money or health. In 2011, a former palliative care worker named Bronnie Ware published a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She sat with patients in their final weeks and wrote down what they said out loud. The single most common regret was this: "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." Think about how that shows up after 60. Some people keep spending to maintain an image. The country club membership they don't enjoy anymore. The car payment that exists so the neighbors don't ask questions. The vacations booked to post, not to savor. Happy retirees let this go. Not by becoming careless with money, but by asking a harder question. Am I doing this because I want it, or because I think I'm supposed to want it? Here's your action for this week. Pick one recurring expense, a subscription, a membership, a habit, and ask yourself honestly who it's really for. If the honest answer is other people, that's your signal to reconsider it. But letting go of appearances is one thing. Letting go of who you've been for 30 years at work, that's a different kind of hard. Here's something almost nobody warns you about retirement. It's not the free time that trips people up. It's the identity gap. In 1980, William Bridges wrote Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes. His core idea was simple but powerful. Every life change has 3 phases. An ending, a confusing middle he called the neutral zone, and a new beginning. Most people expect retirement to feel like an ending, followed immediately by a happy new beginning. Bridges said no. There's a messy middle where you don't quite know who you are anymore. Imagine a man named Robert, a project manager for 30 years, who introduces himself at a barbecue as, "I used to be a project manager." That "used to be" is doing a lot of work. He's still standing in the neutral zone, one foot in the old identity, unsure what replaces it. Happy retirees stop describing themselves by their old job title. They let the neutral zone happen instead of rushing past it or pretending it doesn't exist. Your action this week: introduce yourself to one new person without mentioning your former job. Notice what you say instead. That's a clue to what your next identity might be built from. That neutral zone Bridges talked about connects to something else. How we spend our time changes too, and there's real science behind why that shift is actually good news. Here's something that sounds sad at first but isn't. Stanford psychologist Carstensen has spent decades studying how people relate to time. Her research, published in Science in 2006, introduced what's called socio-emotional selectivity theory. The finding is this: as people sense that time is more limited, they don't become lonelier. They become more selective. They deliberately narrow their social circles to fewer, deeper relationships, and this shift is linked to greater emotional well-being, not less. This flies against what a lot of retirement advice tells you, which is get out there and meet everyone. Carstensen's research suggests the opposite instinct, quality over quantity, is actually the emotionally healthy one. Happy retirees stop chasing a big social calendar. They let go of the friendships and group activities that drain them, and they protect time for the 2 or 3 people who actually matter. Action for this week: make one phone call, not a text, to the person you genuinely miss most if they moved away. Not a group chat. One real conversation. Narrowing your circle takes courage. So does looking backward honestly. Which brings us to a psychologist who studied this exact stage of life 70 years ago. This is the one most people get backwards, so listen closely. In 1950, Erikson published Childhood and Society, where he laid out 8 stages of psychological development across a full life. The final stage, which applies specifically to older adulthood, he called integrity versus despair. Erikson's point was that this stage isn't about arriving at some perfect, settled conclusion about your life. It's about being able to look back at the mix, the wins and the regrets together, and accept it as a whole without needing every piece resolved. Here's the twist. A lot of people think happy retirees have figured it all out. Erikson's actual framework says the opposite. Integrity comes from making peace with the unresolved parts, not eliminating them. So if you still have regrets, unanswered questions, relationships that never got fixed, that doesn't mean you failed retirement. Erikson would say that's the actual work of this stage. Your action this week. Write down one unresolved chapter of your life on paper. Not to fix it, just to acknowledge it exists and set it down instead of carrying it silently. There's one more thing happy retirees release, and it's the one that ties every previous idea together. Here's the last one, and it might be the quietest but most damaging habit of all. Go back to Bronnie Ware's book for a moment. Alongside Living True to Myself, another top regret she recorded was people wishing they hadn't worked so hard and wishing they'd let themselves be happier rather than staying in familiar, safe patterns out of habit or comparison. Combine that with Carstensen's research on time perspective. When people fixate on comparison, I should be further along by now. My neighbor retired earlier. My sister travels more. They're measuring their limited time against someone else's life, not their own. Happy retirees let go of the external timeline entirely. They stop measuring their retirement against anyone else's version of it. Action for this week. Notice the next time you catch yourself thinking, I should be doing what so-and-so is doing. Just notice it. Naming the comparison out loud takes most of its power away. So here's what we covered. Let go of spending to keep up appearances, and ask who your expenses are really for. Let go of your old job title, and give the neutral zone room to breathe. Let go of a wide social circle, and call the 1 or 2 people who truly matter. Let go of needing it all resolved, and let go of measuring your life against someone else's clock. This is educational content, not financial advice. Nothing here is medical or professional guidance either, just research worth knowing about. Here's a question worth sitting with. Which one of these 5 are you still holding onto? Tell us in the comments. We read everyone. If this kind of grounded, well-sourced look at life after 60 is useful to you, subscribe. We do the homework so you don't have to.